Endurance Junkie Podcast, episode 49. Hey there, Junkie. Welcome to another episode of the Endurance Junkie Podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest, and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. In 2014, Ash Dykes walked solo across Mongolia, setting a new world record in the process. From the Altai Mountains across the Gobi Desert to the Mongolian Steppe, Ash covered more than 1,500 miles alone, on foot, while pulling a 120-kilogram cart of provisions behind him. During this epic test of endurance and stamina, Ash battled sandstorms, heat exhaustion, and dehydration. Ash, thanks for taking the time to chat here today. Now, for those of us who don't know you, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your sporting background growing up in Wales?
Yeah, definitely. At the age of 23, I'm 24 now, but last year I was the first person to complete a solo and unsupported expedition across Mongolia, which saw me walking 1,500 miles. But before I go into the details of Mongolia, I'll give you a bit of an overdraft about myself. I've always been really sporty, constantly looking for a challenge, getting out there, testing my limits type of thing. And when I left school a good few years back now, I joined onto a college course, which was a national diploma in outdoor education, a 2-year course, which was great. I was surrounded by the right type of people with the frame of mind for adventure and wanting to also challenge themselves like me. And this was a great course. We learned avalanche awareness, winter mountaineering survival, got a powerboat license. We were really surrounded in the outdoors and getting involved in a way. And I came up with a plan to travel. It was in between year 1 and year 2 of the college course. And I was really lost. I was a bit indecisive of what it was that I wanted to do. A few weeks down the line, I came up with the idea to travel. But of course, this didn't seem feasible at all. I was working as a waiter on minimum wage. I had a car that all my money was going to. I was only 17, pretty much just finished school. And so this big goal of traveling around the world just seemed impossible. It was too difficult to look at the task ahead. And everything that's involved seemed that it can't be done by such an amateur, if you like. But I thought if I break it down, if I section it out and tick off section by section, then I could easily do it. And so the first plan was in the summer holidays in between year 1 and 2, I done my lifeguarding course, found a lifeguarding job a couple of months later, which provided me with a great income. Sold my car and started cycling day in, day out to work. I think I was doing about 240 hours per month. And that was I was pretty much set in earning some good money now and not spending it on my car. But also there was that whole thing of if I was to travel, eventually my money would run out and I'd be back in square one whilst everyone's moved on with their careers. They've got themselves degrees, they've got themselves jobs, a lifestyle, settled down. And so I didn't want that. So I started looking at jobs that I could do abroad, jobs that would help me earn an income, work and live in whichever country I wanted to live in. And so I looked at doing my scuba diving. So I started doing my open water, advanced and rescue diver. And then a year and a half after the whole plan, from when the idea came to my head, that's when I set off for traveling. And now this is where all the adventure started, really. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that it's a pretty amazing feat for a 17-year-old to really plan out the next couple of years to get to that goal. I think at an age where a lot of people are thinking about girls and partying, you definitely had something in your mind that you wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that's it. And I stuck to only one night out a month. So I was really saving the pennies. But I eventually made it. I stayed dedicated, planned it out well with a friend of mine
cool.
who came along with me. our first place was China. We were trekking along the Great Wall of China, which was a realization like, wow, I've done it a year and a half ago. I was in a college course a year after school, but now I've made it. I was now 19. But it wasn't too long before we both felt like we were on the tourist route. We were in Southeast Asia, and we had the same story and the same experience as every other traveler we came across. This isn't what I expected with traveling. I was like, oh man, we need to create our own unique story and our own unique experience. Everything that we had done, we'd come across another traveler and they'd done exactly the same thing and had exactly the same photos. So this is when we started to think, and of course we were starting to run low on money. And so we sat on the bank of Cambodia one day, and me and my friend were discussing, oh man, come on, we need to think of a plan. We need to take on an adventure. And we came up with the idea of cycling Cambodia and trying to cycle the length of Vietnam, but of course on real low budget. Yeah. And just as my friend said, on what bikes, we saw this old frail lady cycle past on this awful looking bike, really. It had no gears, no suspension, a pink bell, a little basket on the front. It looked like it could only get like 20-25 miles before it starts breaking. I pointed at the bike and said, on those, we purchased 2 of those bikes and let's attempt it. Let's go for it. One adventure, that will be for our first adventure away from home, if you like. And so we did. We picked up bikes they must have cost only 15-20 pounds each. No gears, no suspension, bright orange and bright red. We found string on the side of the road, so we attached our rucksacks to the back of our bike with string. We literally spent 10 minutes planning the route on Google and found a tent which wasn't waterproof. We found out the hard way. And off we went. We had all the locals, though, saying that it's not possible. You can't cross the border from Cambodia to Vietnam without an organised and paid tour, in which you'd get a tour guide as well, take you over the border, stamp your passports, give you the visa, and on you go. And they also said that we can't cycle across Vietnam. It's an extreme country, and those bikes won't make it. So we had a lot of negative feedback, really. A lot of people saying you can't, a lot of naysayers. But I suppose you've got to take it in. You've got to absorb it, listen to it, but don't let it stop you. And we didn't. We decided to go for it. We thought, okay, if anything goes wrong, as long as it's not too bad, it'll be a pretty cool adventure. And that was it. We cycled 1,130 miles, and we were doing big distances per day. We were chased down by dogs. We were hit by mopeds, ran by lorries. We were on cliff faces because Vietnam is quite extreme with its mountains. It's not extreme in a survival situation where there won't be any water, but it's extreme in a way that it's just crazy traffic. I don't know. Have you been to Vietnam?
No, unfortunately not. But we definitely see the sights of the traffic in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, that's it. There's just no health and safety.
No.
And we didn't have any lights or anything really. We were pretty silly. It was a pretty risky adventure, but at the same time, it was a really tight budget adventure as well.
So that sort of created a foundation for what you wanted to do later, and you never had the experience of, oh man, this is crazy. We did this, and now let's go back to the tourist track.
No, it really fed our hunger. Once we covered that, it took us about 15 days, and the last day we just wanted to test ourselves, see how long we could cycle for, and we actually cycled 39 hours straight through the day, through the night, and through the following day. And then we're being turned down 7 times by different hostels and hotels because we looked so awful, bloodshot eyes, really skinny. We had living flies still flying out of our hair. Our skin was stained blue from the mosquito spray of the night mixing with the sunscreen from during the day. We eventually found a place, but once we had a good night's sleep, we started eating, we were back in high spirits. We were like, wow, that was awesome. And we were literally, we could have continued to cycle, but we didn't. We thought, right, let's undertake a different adventure next. And we went back to North Thailand. And that's when we learned how to survive with a Burmese hill tribe crossing the border into Burma. And this was an amazing, it wasn't a long, it was only 3-4 days. It wasn't a long one, but we were just in the middle of the jungle. It took us 9 hours to walk through thick jungle, hacking our way through in order to get to this Burmese tribe. And then we learned how to build bamboo shelter, the right berries to use as mosquito repellent, how to hunt, eating off the land, getting water out of bamboo. It was, again, another amazing but different adventure altogether. And it seemed to fire off. It was like the Vietnam one was a true catalyst. I remember when I was cycling, I remember saying to my friend, it'd be amazing to have like a world map on the wall and tick off completely different adventures in completely different countries, if you like. And that sort of stuck with me from that day I said that. And then we went on to then cycle North Australia, hitchhike North Australia, cycle South Australia. This was really low budget as well. The Northern Adventure wasn't planned. We broke down on one of the worst tracks imaginable, and we're near an Aboriginal tribe and had to keep quiet, and took 13 hours before we saw our first car, in which he said he's not leaving us here. Jump in, and he helped us out, and we were hitchhiking then for the next 6 days in order to get to the next city. And then when I went down to South Australia, I got a job which was door-to-door knocking. I was trying to sell Australian power and gas, and this just was not me at all. I was constantly having doors slammed on my face. I couldn't sell the product at all. I was there in a suit as well. It just wasn't me. And then I started looking at doing another adventure, and literally, again, 10 minutes on Google, looking for a bike, which happened to be a female's mountain bike, for $50 with my friend as well. And we both left. We both bought bikes, quit our jobs. The following day, we cycled to the next major city, which was about 750 miles away from Melbourne to Adelaide.
Yeah.
And this was amazing as well. This was across the Great Ocean Road. We saw koala bears out in the wild. We saw all sorts of wildlife, really, cockatoos, snakes, crazy road trains. It's like 4 lorries joined up as one. It's crazy because the air really gets to you, when they drive past really fast. But and we misjudged at one point of the cycle our water supply, and we ended up cycling 7 hours straight, covering 70 miles with literally an inch. 100 millimeters or 200 millimeters of water to share between us in 44 degrees Celsius, and there was no one on the tracks, and this was really bad. We saw a water container at one point, and it was leaking out like water droplets, and I remember just licking the water droplets off it. We were pretty desperate at this time, and then when we saw a car, we were waving our empty bottles. He pulled over, gave us what I think was his dog's water, I'm sure, but I remember filtering it through my t-shirt, and that was fine. That kept us going until we reached the next shop, in which we could then buy lots of milk. But so there was all these adventures, really. There was a time where we felt we were back on the tourist track. We had a 12-month visa in Australia, but we only lasted 3 months there because we really started missing Asia. Everything about Asia I love. It's the locals are really friendly. Of course, it's a really cheap country. There's no health and safety. Well, barely any health and safety, which is obviously bad in some terms, but good in others. It's great when you want to do an adventure. I remember my friend Matt was fined for being on the pavement with his bike in Australia. He was fined $149. So it's little stuff like that got to us when we were on tight budgets. $149 is a lot for just not wearing a helmet on a paved road. Yeah. So that was just like, wow, man, that's crazy. And so when we went back to Asia, we did India, and we visited, the Taj Mahal. We did all the touristy stuff as well. Of course, I think it's always a good grounding, and it is great. Sometimes, you can still party, you can meet some great people from around the world. That's all a part of traveling. But we wanted to head up north towards the Himalayas, and so that was our next adventure. I remember just being in the car with a gypsy who lives up north. And it took us 24 hours to get from Delhi, a city there, up to Srinagar, which is right up north of India, near the border of Pakistan, in order to trek the Himalayas. And it was the craziest drive. I've ever been in by far. 24 hours. I had to tell the guy to pull over and sleep, rest. He misjudged one of the turn-ins and was on the wrong side of the road, and we were going head on against big lorries in the middle of the night. We were driving on across mountains with crazy steep drops on either side. It was terrifying, but we eventually made it. We were in the Himalayas. When we arrived, the guy said, you can go trekking in the Himalayas, of course, but you need to buy a permit because a lot of the Pakistan army patrol the border. The Himalayas, where we were trekking, was very close to the border. But I kind of think that this was some sort of scam, and he wanted us to pay him money so we could give us like a written slip, and off we go. So we took the risk, and me and my friends started trekking the Himalayas, just us two. And as we were near the peak, we were already really high in Srinagar. But as we just heard a helicopter coming over, so I remember both panicking. It probably wasn't for us at all. But we're there taking our tops off because they were bright colours, hiding under rocks, and this helicopter was just hovering above us for about 10, 15 minutes, and we were really panicking. But it disappeared. It wasn't for us. It was fine. But then we went deeper into the Himalayas. We had a permit for this one, and we were trekking. It was a lot higher. I think it was about 5,000 meters, and we were trekking towards the top. And the local gypsy who was trekking with us, shown in the mountain, said that he's not going any further because everyone turns back at this stage, as it's nearing the end of winter, and that's when the avalanches start happening on those mountains. The snow starts melting as well. So no one had actually made it to the top of that certain peak in the 2011 season. And it's that challenge again of someone saying you can't do it, it's too dangerous, and the last people turned back. That's the challenge. If you say something like you can't do it, I'm sure a lot of people get that. If they're told something can't be done, it just makes them want to do it even more. And it was that case with me and my friend Matt Norman, and we went for it. We obviously checked out the avalanche terrain that we were about to trek over. It was okay, it was fine, and got to the top, and that was again another amazing adventure and achievement. But now it was really time to start saving the money again. I was running extremely low. I went to Thailand, and for the next 2 years I was working as a scuba diving instructor in Thailand on two different islands, Koh Tao and Koh Lipe. Koh Lipe is a small island right down south where the Chaole live, practically pirates, and there's really untouched parts to scuba dive. So I was pretty much exploring new dive destinations, searching for caves, searching for wrecks, searching for places I could take students to dive, whilst learning and competing in the local martial art against the locals in Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And so this was a fantastic lifestyle. I really loved it. I was there for 2 years, but then I started to feel pretty settled. I knew I was still young, I was still strong, healthy, and I knew that there was lots of land for me to still go exploring, and lots more challenges to test myself in. I was only 22 when I chose to take on a new expedition. And now this one, I knew I wanted it to be much bigger than all the rest, and I wanted it to be a walk, as I had done a few cycles before. But it was just finding a country where I could walk in far off a tarmac road, because I didn't want to be walking along a tarmac road. I wanted to be out there in the wild. I had an idea of pulling like all my survival gear on a trailer. So all my supplies that I needed to survive, I'd be effectively pulling myself through crazy terrain, and also the challenge of being alone. My friend didn't want to join me on this one. He loved the sound of it, but he thought it was a bit too risky. And I did as well, but it was something I needed to really find out for myself. And so when I got the world map out, I started looking at different countries of where I could go. And Mongolia has always struck me as being that really extreme yet unknown country. I was on the touristy track for 2 years as a scuba diver, like I said, and I didn't meet one other traveller who said that, oh yeah, they've just come from Mongolia. And that would be topic of conversation. That would be travelling, because of course they were travelling through Southeast Asia. And not one of them said that they'd been to Mongolia. So this really, I really liked the sound of this, and I wanted to explore what Mongolia had to offer. I knew nothing about it except its extreme weather and its very extreme and different terrain, being the Altai Mountains in the west, the Gobi Desert down south, and then the steppe up in the east and Northern Territory. And so planning such a big expedition, though, I wasn't used to, because like I said, it's normally 5-10 minutes on Google and off I go. But of course I can I can do 5-10 minutes planning for this next expedition. So I had to find some sort of logistics manager to help coordinate the expedition, and someone who knows Mongolia really well. And I was contacted by one of my a member of family saying to contact the adventurists who run the Mongol Rally and other adventures within Mongolia and outside. And that's when a guy called Rob Mills, who eventually became my expedition manager, that's when he contacted me. And when I asked him, is it possible to walk solo and unsupported across the country of Mongolia? He had lived there for 5 years. He knows the country very well. And he got back to me saying, no, but I'm more than happy to help you, attempt it at least. So this, again, was a setback. This was intimidating. And I felt kind of naive, with my outsider's ideas. I've never been to this country, and I'm saying I want to trek the length of it. I felt a bit too like this was a bit of an audacious feat, if you like. But I thought, come on, you've got to stick to it. You've got to make it happen. The doubts come with every challenge, or with whatever you do in life, whatever you decide. There's always going to be something to stop you from attempting it, or something to put you off. But I knew that I had to really stay focused for this. I knew that there was going to be a lot of challenges ahead, even in the planning stages. I was skint as a diver. You don't make good money, so I knew I was relying on sponsors. I'd never been to Mongolia. I didn't know anyone who could build a trailer. So pretty much everything was against me in that case. But what I didn't know, I wasn't in it for any world record at all. I was in it purely for the adventure and for the challenge. But after I started doing some research, and Rob started doing research, and other team members then started doing research, and we contacted the Guinness Book of Records, we found out that if we couldn't find any evidence to suggest that this had been completed before, we found a guy who had attempted the expedition and got really far. He got 1,012 miles, and he was the first to attempt a solo and unsupported walk across Mongolia, but he didn't quite make it. He was evacuated. And this guy, he's a Navy soldier and a desert explorer. And again, this was another factor that I had to take into account, because I was no soldier, and I was definitely no desert explorer. I'd never been to the desert before. So again, there was many things putting me off this idea, but I stuck to it. But this idea of it being a world first made it a lot bigger than I ever expected, and it drove me back to the UK in order to plan it properly, to get the right team on board, to get the correct sponsors, to find the right guy to build the right trailer, in order to succeed in this expedition, or help your chances of succeeding as much as possible.
So how much time did it take you then to actually plan it out?
It took, from when the idea popped into my head, it was about 15 months.
Before you actually left and to the walk?
From when the idea popped into my head until day one of the walk.
Cool. So did you pull everything yourself? I mean, all your food and your water, or were you hoping to find that stuff along the way as well?
We had to plan out the water points along the way. So we would have confirmed water sources along the way. We hope that they would confirm. Some of the wells do dry out in the summer. But I'd try and stick to 25 litres in a water container. And that's what I'd be towing on the trailer, as well as food and other provisions, clothing, camera gear, etc. But we had to make sure the water points were bang on. So say if I had 100 miles between two wells, I'd have to make sure I carry enough water to see me 100 miles in order to get to the next well. Hope that there's water to the next well, or salmon.
So how many kilos was that cart that you pulled?
Altogether, it was 120 kilograms.
Right. That's
So it's about 18 stone.
yeah, that's a nice way to carry around.
Yeah, that's it. So I had 5.5 weeks worth of ration packs in which were really rationed. I was sticking to 2 a day. We got really skinny. I lost 10 kilograms. And was really starving it a lot of the time. But I could get snacks at any cities or settlements I would come across. I would top up on snacks and fill up my trailer with snacks. But then I had the tent equipment, I had the cooking equipment, clothing, protective gear for the sandstorms or the snow blizzards, or the camera gear. I was sponsored by a production company in London. They actually funded the expedition. If I come back and give them the footage that I filmed in order for them to put together in post-production and possibly broadcast on TV. It's currently in post-production now, so I'm hoping it goes ahead. And so that was great, but I did have a lot of camera gear and electronics to carry then.
Okay.
Which boosted the weight up.
So in the end, were all the water spots correct, or did you miss any, or did you have any difficulties along the way?
There was a part where I didn't miss any, but there was a part where I didn't top it up as much. I think what the reason was, I was just going through it a lot faster than I expected in the Gobi Desert. In the Altai, I was only taking in 1, maybe 2 liters, which is ridiculously low. But in the Gobi, I was taking in much more. And there was one part where I really suffered from heat exhaustion. And this heat exhaustion was getting worse. Towards the end, it was slipping into heat stroke, and I was in a really, really bad state. I was still 3 days away from my next well. I had only a bit of water left. That water was boiling hot as well. My eyes were hurting. I had a banging headache. I could feel my insides just weren't working properly. It was a horrible experience. Every 10 minutes I would have to hide under my shelter because it was about 40 degrees Celsius, but it was in the desert. So as I was trying to pull this trailer weighing almost double my weight, it was sinking in the sand. Each step was just 100% effort. The sun was just getting to me. There was no breeze. There was no natural shade. And so I was pretty much forced to seek shelter under my trailer and rest. And I kept... So it took 3 days, and when I did eventually make it to the next small settlement, which is very small, in fact, it's only got a few gurs, the felt tents, a few shops, and a few other huts and buildings. It took me 7 days to recover when I made it there. It was that bad.
Yeah. I guess once you made it, you maybe you had some thought about quitting, in those last 3 days, or did it ever pop into your mind?
It didn't, and that's where I shocked myself. I'd probably say out of the whole expedition, that's probably when I was most proud of myself, is the fact that I didn't think of stopping or quitting. I don't know whether that's a brave choice or a stupid choice, really, because I did have a satellite phone, but unfortunately, it would still take my team 3 days to get to me because they have to travel overland. The helicopters can't really fly out there because there's too many sandstorms, which I got blasted by on a good few occasions, and the wind is just too strong in general. So they'd have to drive. So there was a time where it was, okay, I'm 3 days away from the settlement. If I call for backup now, it's going to take them 3 days to get to me, or I take 3 days and attempt to walk to the settlement. And although I was never going to touch that button and ask them to help, there was that option where if I miss it now and I decide to press it tomorrow, then that's 2 days away from the settlement, but still another 3 days before they get to me, and I could be in a worse position than I am now. So I did have that awkward choice of, right, if I'm going to attempt this, I need to commit fully and make sure I do get to that well. Otherwise, I'm definitely screwed in the Gobi Desert. But luckily, I made it. But yeah, it took me 7 days to recover. I felt it being even worse. I just had to stay inside that small hut all day. Even 2 seconds out in the sun, it'd be awful for me.
Right.
I just had to eat loads of food, drink lots of water, but there's only carrots and potatoes that grow in Mongolia. And in this small settlement, I couldn't even find carrots or potatoes, so it was just meats and fat. So I wasn't taking in my nutrients really, which was difficult.
Right. but you pulled through, and it took you 78 days, right, to finish the whole trek.
That's it. Yeah. So 78 days.
Yeah, because you also got some praise from the locals. I think they started calling you the lonely snow leopard. So you definitely became famous within Mongolia for doing this.
Yeah, and they were really, really supportive throughout the whole expedition. They're even now they still write, which is fantastic. But yeah, the locals. That was actually my translator when I was in a city and had signal. I was on the phone to my translator, who's Mongolian, and he said that the locals there in Ulaanbaatar, the capital city of Mongolia, have come up with a name for me. And I was like, "What's that?" And he says, "The lonely snow leopard." And I remember thinking, "Oh, okay, that's cool. A bit of extra motivation for me." But why the lonely snow leopard? Why not the lone wolf or something? And he says because the snow leopard's the only beast to walk alone, and it's what the wolves keep a healthy or a respectful distance away from. For which, of course, they didn't approach me, and which the last guy who attempted it, I think he was being stalked by wolves for 2 weeks. Although I did have locals on 2 different occasions tell me that the wolves are hunting ahead and that I would be eaten alive, which was an intimidating thought.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So yeah, you made it through. Do you feel you're like a different person now than you were before? Because this was the first time that you actually did an adventure completely by yourself, and then not a small one. So do you feel different now?
I do. In a way that I wasn't sure how I would react in so many situations that I was about to put myself into. With the wolves, like I said then, for example, with the dehydration, with some of the blizzards, with being alone, and that would keep me awake on a lot of nights before the expedition. But now that I've seen how I react, and how well I did cope alone, and how I reacted in the dehydration, and when they said about the wolves hunting ahead, and all different scenarios, I found that I'm much more capable than I ever thought. I sort of doubted myself in a way, especially flying over Mongolia to get to the storm position. I only covered 3/4 of the country, but it still took three hours to get to the storm position, which was intimidating. I remember looking down and thinking, "Oh man, Ash, what are you doing? Why did you decide upon this expedition?" That looks intimidating as hell down there.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do after this? I mean, it seems hard to beat.
I've actually got a big expedition that I'm planning for. It's looking bigger and better than Mongolia, with 2 major world records involved. It's going to be a major challenge, probably on the brink of what's humanly possible. But I can't announce it just yet, unfortunately.
Oh, come on, Ash.
But maybe on the next interview, hey.
Yeah, well, if it's made public, we'll definitely get you back and talk about that one. Before we go, because it's about all the time we have here for today, feel free to give some love to all the people that supported you in this amazing feat. Yes,
I appreciate that. It's pretty much everyone, all the followers. They were sending such nice messages when I was out there, and such great support throughout. The Mongolians, especially as well, whilst I was trekking through their country, and on arrival at their capital city, Ulaanbaatar. But of course, Rob Mills, my manager, helping me collaborate and put all of this together. I couldn't have done it without the logistics being planned out, which he did an excellent job. Crag Oppers for their gear, which is fantastic. Kukri Sports, Merrill, Green Tire, which they provided custom made puncture-proof tyres for my trailer, and Paul Walker, who's a family friend who actually built the trailer. Vamoose as well for their jacket, Forever Living. Goodfoot, Explorers Connect, Maui Gym, and Water to Go, which I highly recommend on any adventures that you do. There's no pumping involved in filtering the water. You literally top it up in a small plastic bottle, and it's got a built-in filter. And that's it. You just top it up and drink, and it kills 99.9% of all bacteria and contaminants. And obviously, my family and friends for being such huge support throughout as well.
All right, awesome. Well, I'll definitely try to put links to all those sponsors on the show note page. Besides the next expedition, is there anything else you want to plug?
Yes, I'd like to. I've got a UK tour coming up. It's called Ash Dykes Breaking Mongolia, The Lonely Snow Leopard. And I'll be visiting 10 different theatres around the UK, Scotland, England, and Wales. I've got a book which also holds the same title name that's in post production, a documentary that's in post production, and I've also been nominated for the National Adventure Awards, it's now open for public vote. I've been shortlisted, and I'd appreciate if anyone could check it out and send in their votes if they feel I'm worthy of such an award. That would be fantastic, and you can visit that through the ScottishAdventureAwards.com.
All right, I'll put that in the notes as well. All right, thanks very much for your time, Ash. It's been amazing to hear about these crazy adventures, and wishing you all the best for that next one. Really curious to find out what it is.
Appreciate it, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Take care.